So this morning I have Dean Jaggard with me. It's bright and early, so excuse the sun popping out behind me. It's a bit bright. Over there it's 4 p.m. with you, Dean, isn't it? How are you?
It is. Nice and raining, actually. Quite the opposite.
I'm so sorry to be showing you the sun.
Yeah, not so great weather as what you're having. Thank you.
So good to have you.
Just to cheer us up.
Good to have you. Well, you've had a long career with Rolls-Royce and Bentley. So you've been with Clark and Carter, P&A Wood. You now run a thriving community group as well.
Yep.
Tell us about your history. When did you start?
Well, actually, it'll be 30 years ago. In June of 1990, I started my apprenticeship at P&A Wood. I did a 5-year apprenticeship there with, I don't know people who know about P&A Wood, but it's a massive restoration company for Rolls-Royce and Bentley cars, very much established. I was a Saturday boy before that, and Andy come up to me once, he said, how do you fancy doing an apprenticeship here? And I thought, well, that's not the sort of thing you sort of turn down an apprenticeship at a Rolls-Royce and Bentley dealership. At that time was just a Rolls-Royce dealer, or Rolls-Royce service station, I should say. It wasn't later on until it became a dealership. But I did 5 years there as an apprentice, getting all the rubbish jobs like apprentices do in the early days, buffing nuts and bolts and filing nuts and bolts and stuff like that, which was interesting. But then you got to learn off the technicians, which had lots of experience, and very, very knowledgeable in each of their fields, sort of thing. And you was moved around to different departments. But my love was sort of post 65 cars up to the modern cars. But I kept on moving around. But you learn different techniques of different people, and it's, I think, what Paul and Andy, who were the bosses, wanted to achieve from you, sort of thing. So basically, after that 5 years, I've become a fully fledged sort of junior technician, and working on PDI-like spirits, turbo R's at the time. This newfangled injection system, which had only been out 3 years, which in America had been out quite some time. So we would sort of our SUs were more our thing, sort of thing. And then progressing forward from there, I got into, the VW group got involved, and Andy came up to me and he said, do you want to get more involved with Bentley as the new generation VWs? So I thought, well, why not? So then I went down that path of becoming a Bentley Master Tech for them, and looking after GTs, Mulsanne and all that kind of cars, but still working on anything post 65. So you still had, well, one day you could have a CAN problem with a GT, and next day you could be changing points on a Shadow 1. So it was quite nice, the fact you had that great span of different cars, quite enjoyable.
Yeah.
Then my career progressed a little bit more, and then they were asked if I'd like to get more with the Goodwood cars of BMW, and I did start doing all the courses down at Goodwood, which was really interesting to see how different the two companies were. Massively different, as in size. VW, who owned Bentley at Crewe, was a massive, took over the original plant and increased it in size, but Goodwood was a new beginning. It was absolutely just a new plant with everything was brand new, everything. So where the factory was built, it was just on a field, which was taken over by, I think it was Lord March who owns the property. And I think they've got a 999-year lease on that property. So P&A got more and more involved with even the development of the new Phantom, which was nice to see that touch of involvement. And then progressing from there, I've become more or less a master tech for those type of cars. So I had that to deal with. The the Bentley side to deal with, and all the post 65 cars. So there was quite a lot of cars coming in, and you never knew what was going to come in next. And I think that's what kept it really interesting. Then after that, I progressed on to becoming a junior deputy supervisor, where I was more involved with liaising with customers, and I enjoyed that. That was great because you saw all these a spectrum of different kind of customers walking through the door, and you had to deal with their problems with their cars and how to work with them to get them sorted and keep the customer happy. So that was great fun as well. So
you were mentioning you did a lot of travel as well as part of that role. I was overseas trips to fix cars.
People laugh at me. It was quite funny because one of them was to go over to the Seychelles. A customer, as you do, and basically it was a new type Phantom. It was the Gainswood Phantom, which between Paul Wood and Mr. Gaines Cooper had put money in, or develop into a new type Phantom, but wanted to change the aesthetics of the outside. So the front end of that particular was changed to a Continental headlights arrangement and different styling in that way. But the car ended up going to Seychelles and was given it to the governor of the island. Now, every now and again, the governor of the island had diplomats or different kind of dignitaries come over to the island, and they would bring this car out, and it was obviously to ferry the people around in. Well, this car was just put away, say for a year or 2 years, never touched, just left alone. So all the air suspension was collapsed, tyres were flat, batteries were flat. So Paul asked, I think it was Andy asked me, he said, how do you feel about going over to the Seychelles? Sort this car out for Mr. Gainscope and the governor of the island. And I thought,
you were like, yes,
I'm not going to say no. Yeah, yes, please. Yeah, I'll have some of that. So I think I was over there for about 3 or 4 days, and so I met Mr. Gainscope, who's an absolutely lovely bloke, absolutely got on like a house on fire. And he said to me, he said, well, you're going to start, because I had a bit of trouble at the airport because I didn't know where I was staying, and customs did not like that at all. So lucky enough, Mr. Gaines Cooper comes to me and says, right, I'll take charge of this. And he sorted it out for me. Anyway, he says to me, you're going to stay in the hotel I stayed at when I was having my house built. And I thought, this is going to be quite impressive, this place. So it was called a place called the Fisherman's Cove. So I went to this place, the Fisherman's Cove, and went in there, and I thought, wow, this is quite impressive. And of course, it was just full of honeymooners. And it's me on my own. So everybody's looking at this strange bloke all on his own, and all these couples. So that was good. But then I got taken up to the island, out to the governor's house, and they showed me this poor Phantom, which is absolutely in quite a state. And so I thought, well, let's get a jump pack on it, at least try and get it started. So, and it cranked over and it started. I thought, thank goodness for this. And then the air suspension raised up. I thought, well, this is getting better. And we dragged it out, and it was fine. So it was just a case of cleaning it up, clearing the codes down on it, puts a couple of new batteries on it, and giving it a drive. So basically a few days we would sort of clean it up. And lucky enough, the governor, the PA of the governor, decided they wanted some involvement from some BMW people who were working on the island, so they could look after the car. So I had this guy come down with his son, and his son was about, I think he was about 13, 14, and he loved it. And he was I wasn't getting a lot of help from the chauffeur, because he's obviously thought, well, I'm taking over for his job, and he had the haze on for me. Right. So I spoke to the PA. I said, look, you need to move him out of the way for me so that I can do my job properly. I was getting quite annoyed. I was jet lagged and everything like this. So I thought, I need to get this sorted anyway. the BMW guy and his son give me a hand to clean the car. And this was after a few days, and we were still waiting for these batteries to turn up. And so everybody was getting a bit worried about this, and I thought, well, there's nothing I can do. They tried the island to see if they could source some batteries. No chance.
No.
So anyway, this guy helps me clean the car up. Anyway, the PA says on the last day, she said, well, you've got to take the car out for a run, see if everything's brilliant, everything's sorted on it. So I said, oh no, that's fine. So I said, well, I can take it out for a drive. And I thought, do you know what? The guy with the BMW guy with his son, I said, you've got to come with me. We all jumped into this Phantom. We were driving around the island, and of course, there's nothing else like that on the island at all. A big Phantom like that, Phantom 7. And the guy's son was in his element because he was sitting in the back with the windows down, enjoying himself.
That's a memory, isn't it? That was
that was fantastic. Yeah, it was fantastic. I really enjoyed that. So
when you have to go over and repair a car remotely in a different country, do you take a big bag of tools, or what do you take with you? What if you get there and they need a part that you don't have with you?
You try to work as if you'd gauge it as like you'd be going to a breakdown, say in this country.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to gauge all your different variables and work out, well, it could be that, it could be this, and then try. You can't take everything, you can't take every tool.
But you do take a suitcase full of stuff.
You take a suitcase. Brings me on to another story. I had to go to Singapore, and I had to go there with a load of car modules. Like you were saying, you have to go for everything. So I had probably 10 or 15 modules for different areas of the car. So I went up to the passport control and I said, look, I'm going to be completely honest here. I said, I've got a suitcase full of electronics, which looks like a bomb. And she just looked and laughed at me. She said, and I said, look, I'm being honest with you, because the last thing I want to do is get to Singapore with this suitcase of car modules and then get pulled over, and then something serious happens to me. I said, I don't want to go down that road. So she looks at me and she says, have you got any screwdrivers in there? And I said, and then she said, have you got a hand drill in there? And I thought, no. And she said, well, that should be all right then, shouldn't it? And I thought, well, that was it. So,
have you got a potato in there at that point?
Yeah,
like, what?
Honestly, I couldn't believe it. She just said those 3 items, and yeah, but it looks like a bomb. It's got loads of electronics going on in there, but no, honestly, they weren't interested.
Amazing,
so.
isn't it? What they're looking for. Okay, so that.
Yeah, that was quite news.
Be prepared.
Yes.
So on that note, I was going to say, you were going to give us some advice for owners of different kind of age ranges of cars. If you've got a particular car in this age range, Dean is going to give you a word of wisdom.
Yes, basically, we'll start with shadows. Basically, if you're looking to buy one, I mean, my business is going to be involved in pre-inspection. So a little bit of guidance if you're going to go out there alone is basically with shadows, and especially in the UK, is corrosion. I mean, to look out for your seals, look around the rear arches. Basic, or the seals are the main problem, really. Then you got onto your oil leaks. You look for the rear main oil seal leaking from around the gearbox bell housing area. Also, base drain holes around on the V8 engine. And what happens is that they leak oil from there. If the the seals for the cylinder liners are leaking, that's where there's a visible hole where it leaks out oil. So that's sort of things to look out for, knowing that you've got potential problems in the future. Checking electrics, make sure everything electrical works, and also, in fact, on SY cars or shadow cars, is air conditioning. If an air conditioning may be working, but if it's still, and not all cars will probably be like this, but there's such thing as R12 AC gas. And basically, if it's on that gas, you will need to have it changed to 134A, the newer type of gas. So always think about what other things might come ahead in the future, the costs of things, even down to tyres, you know, the age of tyres, looking at date stamps on tyres, you know, where cars have been stood around. I mean, they not do 2,000 or 3,000 miles a year, but if you look at a set of tyres, they could be 10, 15 years old. So always keep these things in mind. A lot of that sort of carries over to SZ cars as well, but SZ cars, to watch out for spring pots on the rear suspension, radius arms. They corrode out quite badly, and they obviously that would need a repair section to put into there. The other thing is, when looking at a spirit, always look at the leveled height of the spirit, because if it's sinking to the front, it's more than likely that the front suspension springs are collapsing. So you might need to think about putting a costs in of the springs, and also for the fact if springs are unserviceable, that damages suspension bushes, because they're now the car's sitting in the wrong position, and also can knock out front tyres as well, because the camber of the tyres is drawn in, and so it wears the inner edges of the tyre. So there's all these things to sort of think about.
When I next go and buy a car, you're coming with me.
Well, there's a lot of people are saying that now to me, so well, and there's me trying to tout my business, but the thing is though, is that say for a certain value for an inspection, and you find £3,000 or £4,000 worth of items which require replacement, that's a figure that you can either walk away from that car or put that value just to argue the case with buying it for that from that person who's selling. So there's all these different angles. I know it's a certain value that maybe we think, oh, you know, it's a lot of money to pay for an inspection, but at least that way you get a little bit more confidence that you've got somebody who's got a little bit more experience, who can advise you about certain areas. Say if there's a problem there, how much is that going to cost me? And to the person going there to look at the cars, he may guess totally incorrectly and therefore be lumbered with a car that's going to cost him a fortune. They say it's nothing's more expensive than a cheap Rolls Royce or Bentley, which is everybody's heard that, and that is so true, you know. So always bear that in mind. Moving on to Nages, they have a little bit of body corrosion issues, but with them it's subframes. Subframes corrode, they crack, they can have problems there. The later engines have camshaft issues, so you listen out for cold starts. If you get, I know it's a noisy engine anyway, but listen out for camshaft issues. So all these different variables you've got to keep an eye on. And service history for any car throughout the range is absolutely spot on. You need to know that it's had a good life basically and being well looked after. When you've got a wad of receipts about an inch thick, you know, oh blimey, there's been some love put into this car. You are, yeah. It's like somebody said to me recently, I said, well, I'm looking at buying a low mileage car, but he said to me, I'm worried about that there's been a 2 or 3 year area where nothing's happened. And I said, well, look, that's a worrying as well, because coolants need replacing, hoses need replacing, tyres need replacing, because it's just stood there. So there's all these different things you have to sort of get your head around, sort of thing. And you know, it's kind of
preventative care rather than, you know, maintenance.
Yes.
With these cars. Okay, so that brings me on to obviously your group.
Yes.
You've got a very active Facebook community. How many members do you have now?
I have now over 5,000 members.
So you're beating us.
It's not a competition.
I know. It's a very good technical group. There's a lot of, obviously you're running it, so you can always jump in when somebody has a problem. So it's the Topics, Faults and Restorations group. That's not the full name, but that's our shortened version. Yeah, tell me how you started it, and what was the kind of idea behind starting it?
Basically, it was a couple of years ago. I'd always thought about starting a Facebook group like this, and I was just going on Facebook and I saw a site for Bentley Continental cars, and this guy Mass had a problem with his trickle charger on his car, and he said, "Oh, this trickle charger doesn't work." He said, "I think it's broken." And that's me being me, sort of knowing what problems they can have. I said, "Well, look, let's not jump to conclusions here." So we're writing back and forth, sort of thing. Why don't you check this, check that, sort of thing. And the one problem normally happens is when people plug the charger into the car, they can blow the fuse inside the car. So that's not, therefore it's breaking the link to charging the battery. So anyway, we went a bit to and fro, and anyway, he come back and he said, he took a picture and there was this blown fuse. He said, "Brilliant." He said, "You found my problem." He said, "It's cost me 99 pence. He said, why didn't you start a group?" And I said, "Look, I've been thinking about it." And he said, "Well," he said, "you should do it." He said, "Because look at, you've saved me £200 or £300 investigation." And I thought, well, yeah, I don't mind doing that. And what's nice is that there's all kinds of people on the group from all. I never wanted to make it Pacific for a Pacific model. I wanted it to be the full range. We're a full family. They don't all get on because I mean, admittedly, the people who are through and through Rolls-Royce and Bentley people are not maybe so keen on the new generation cars, but I feel now they're a little bit more tolerant, hopefully, and vice versa. So we're all sort of getting on. And what's nice, like you said, it's not really about me now, and I've noticed it. It's more about, it's a community. It is a community, and also the fact is that there's the guys like John Bolin who jumps in there for a question. I think I'm about to answer this question. Oh, John's got in there first. Oh well, or Paul York, or people like this, and they always jump in and help. And then other people who've experienced the fault before, who've worked for themselves, they have a go as well, and they give their advice. So it's nice. It's nice that we, helps out everybody with little bits and pieces. And also it's great for the fact is that if it becomes a larger job that the owner can't deal with, he can approach the people like myself or John Bolin or people like this and know that, well, they put a little bit in helping me before, so I'm going to help them back with their business. So it works. I think it works quite well, really. And the same as you with your parts. It's great that we can all work together. You put deals out there saying, how much for this, and that helps to the group members and stuff like that. So it's good. Yeah. It's a great community.
Well, the trouble is we're so niche. Our industry is so niche that it's very hard to search and find services in the same way that a lot of other industries can. And so those groups really do, they thrive on their own. Everyone's helping each other out and sharing links to specialists, local businesses, which I think is great. I was going to ask you, I know that you've just bought your own car. So obviously we like to talk about personal cars on these interviews, and you've just bought yourself a Shadow.
I've got a picture.
Okay, great.
There we go.
What's her history?
Well, I wasn't very well about over a year ago. And I decided, obviously working in this world, I thought, well, I really love a Rolls Royce. It's just one of those things. It goes on, badges you, and I thought I've got to get one. While I was going through my treatment, I thought it'd be nice to sort of be ferried around in my Rolls Royce sort of thing. So anyway, I always wanted the Series 1. I wanted the Shadow 1. And basically one come up for sale, which I'd worked on since I was 16, and basically this car disappeared. And I thought, I was actually gutted because I thought, that's the one I really wanted.
I love it. You knew the car.
I knew. No, this is not the one I ended up with.
Okay.
So which is a real shame because it was a Caribbean blue
Yeah.
with an oatmeal interior. And I thought, well, the only way to do this is maybe, well, because Shadow 2, so make that slightly bit more drivable, I'll get a Shadow 2, but in the same colour arrangement. So I bought this Caribbean blue with a parchment interior, oatmeal interior. And while I was ill, my dad and myself would do bits and pieces to it if and when I could do it. I was going through cancer treatment at the time, so I could only do so much. And between the car, working on the car and the group, kept me going.
Yeah.
It really kept me going. And because I always had something else on my mind, if something about the car or answering it, because if I wasn't very well in the morning, I could wake up at 2 o'clock. Yeah. And I'd be writing to somebody in America about a problem with their car, or somebody in Australia about a problem with their car. So it was quite nice that, and then also in my interaction with my dad, because my dad could drive the car, and I let him drive it all the time. I just was in the passenger seat being ferried around.
I love it. Well, you look so well now. I'm so pleased.
Oh, thank you.
Lovely story to bring the two of you together and work on the car. Yeah. And no pressure, no customers breathing down your neck.
No. So, yeah, but it's a fantastic car. I just love it. And one time when my dad was driving it, and he said to me, he was driving along, and I thought, bloody hell, he's going a bit slow, isn't he? He's only doing about 50 miles an hour. I said, Dad, can drive a little bit faster if you want. He said, why would I want to get home faster? I'm driving a Rolls Royce. So there you go. You put me straight.
I think we might put that on our bags next summer for the show. Why would I want to drive fast?
Yeah, there you go. You get a catch line. Yeah. I'd have to copyright that, won't I?
Yeah. Oh, that's a lovely story. Okay, so Dean, what is the future for you? I know you've started up your own business. What's the future like?
Basically, I've started Jaggard Consultants. I'm going to try and see. Well, because we're in precarious times. I don't know where this is going to lead, but at the moment, I'm going to start a company which will look at pre-inspections of cars, say Silver Shadow onwards, basically inspecting cars and valuing if the customer wants that, all types of reports, and then basically doing service and maintenance to what I can do, and also doing a bit of sales as well. So that should be quite interesting to see what direction this leads for us all. To be truthful, it's like a new era, isn't it? We're going to be moving into.
We can take you on Zoom for our inspections. I mean,
yes,
it's mobile now, right? Have you got a website?
I have. Yes, it's www.jaggardconsultants.co.uk. Okay. So if you look on there, there's a website there. You can learn a little bit more about myself. You can learn about what I can put out there for you. And any questions, just email or phone me and see if I can help you out at all. So.
Well, thank you, Dean. That's amazing. Have you got a last tidbit or advice for anyone?
It's one thing I'd just like to say, going back to my group. It's a little bit of a somber thing, but a good friend of mine, John Embley, died over the weekend. He was on the group. He put his input into the group. A lovely guy, a really lovely guy, and he'd be sadly missed, to be truthful. And I thought I'd like to mention him.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Dean.
He was such a pillar of the group, and also he gave out such great advice to us all. And his stories were wonderful, absolutely wonderful. He had a story for everything, and it was fantastic. Every time you put a post up, and somebody made a comment, he would have a story behind it. So he was fascinating, and such a sad loss for us all in the group. Yes, so, but I thought I'd like to mention that.
Well, thank you.
That's
you.
all right.
Okay, well, it was lovely to speak to you this morning, and yeah, I really wish you all the best in the new business.
Thank you. Thank you.
We will be a big supporter of you, and I'm going to put the website address up and phone number. And
thank you very much for that, Annika. Love that.
Okay. Well, bye, Dean. I'll see you again, hopefully at some point in the summer, maybe in London. Bye, my dad. Thank you.
It's a pleasure talking to you anyway.
You too.
See you later.
Bye. Thank goodness she didn't do that earlier.